The other day, I covered North Korea on my podcast. This is a very fascinating subject to me, and I've been meaning to talk about it on my main channel for a while anyway, so I figured I'd upload it here. Okay, let's get into it. So this is a subject I haven't really talked about very much in the past, but I actually know a good bit about North Korea, because naturally, North Korea runs a lot like a cult does, interestingly enough, and I've never covered it on my main channel. I really should, because it's such an extreme place to live. But let's take a look at this article. It's by the BBC, which is a UK-based news organization, and see what they have to say about North Korea. The title is North Korea: Everything You Need to Know About the Country. For decades, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, more commonly known as North Korea, has been one of the world's most secretive countries. Its government doesn't like people from outside the country going there and finding out what's going on. It shares a border with a country called South Korea, and the two countries have not gone on with each other for a long time. It's kind of a British thing to say. A North Korean leader had not stepped foot in South Korea for 65 years, and the leaders of the countries had not met for 10 years. From my understanding, there's this, like on the border of North Korea, there's this set of buildings, the border between North Korea and South Korea. And anytime they're going to meet, it's like a DMZ, like a demilitarized zone kind of, where the militaries of each country are not allowed to be there without notice, pretty much, of either side. And so when South Korea meets with North Korea, they go to these buildings and they sit down at the tables and talk things out there with militaries from each party, or militaries from each country there. It's like really, really serious. And I could be wrong, but I think that's where North Korea does most of their meetings. Not just with South Korea, but with whoever, with the outside world. China is technically, I think, North Korea's only ally on paper officially. So they're allowed to get things from China shipped into North Korea, like cell phones and things like that. Back to the article, it says, a North Korean leader had not stepped foot in South Korea for 65 years, and the leaders of the countries had not met for 10 years. But that changed in April 2018 when North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with the president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in. Interesting names. I like the names, actually. Moon Jae-in, that's a cool name. At the border between the two countries. The meeting was a significant moment in modern history. By the way, Korean names, I believe, are backwards. So Kim Jong-un is from the Kim family. Like, I'm from the Morgan family. I'm Owen Morgan, my last name being Morgan. So Kim Jong-un is from the Kim family. It's like Kim is their last name, basically. In order to better understand the relationship between the two countries, we need to take a look back over the last few decades at the history of this secretive country. When was North Korea created? North Korea was formally created on September 9th, 1948, following the end of World War II, along with another country called South Korea. My grandfather actually fought in the Korean War, like my mom's dad fought in the Korean War. It was like a really ugly thing. The political differences between the two rival states led to the outbreak of a horrific war in 1950, which lasted 3 years. Since then, North Korea and South Korea have been enemies. Since 1948, North Korea has been ruled by 3 men from the same family. Kim Il-sung was the country's first supreme leader, who was in charge until his death in 1994. Control passed next to his son, Kim Jong-il, who held power for 17 years. Wow, that's interesting. Kim Il-sung was actually, he is officially still the leader of North Korea, even though he's dead. I think Christopher Hitchens jokes around and says that it's the first ever necrocracy, the first country that's run by a dead guy, pretty much. Kim Il-sung actually ordered a pillow made of the softest down in existence. And down, for those who may not know, they're the feathers underneath on a bird. They're like the feathers closest to the bird's body, basically. And it took him 500 sparrows, from my understanding, to get this pillow. They killed 500 sparrows to get the softest down in existence. It's pretty sad. Anyway, in 2011, North Korea announced Kim Jong-il's son, Kim Jong-un, as its new leader. Around 1 million people gathered in the capital city, Pyongyang, to hear the announcement. What is life like in North Korea? North Korea is home to more than 25 million people who live under a form of communist rule which strictly controls all areas of daily life. It's interesting because the title, the name of the country is DPRK, which is Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So on paper, actually, it's a democratic republic, exactly the same as the United States is. We're not a democracy, we're a democratic republic. When the founding fathers were setting up the government, they basically did it in such a way that the minority would be protected from the majority. That's the goal of the Electoral College and the system of senators and House members that we have set up. It's protection for minorities against majorities. And that's why it's not a pure democracy, because they didn't want majority rules here. They wanted a fair system that would balance itself out, basically. And in a democracy, say hypothetically, Christianity, just like extremist evangelical Christianity gets a foothold here, they wanted to make sure that people that weren't a part of that group were protected from extremist Christians. That's the goal behind the whole thing. Now, that's actually really, really smart. That's a really good, smart way to do it. But naturally, as with every system, there are flaws in the system that I would like to see worked out. I want to see continued protections for minorities against the majority, for sure. It's an amazing system, but it's not perfect. No system is perfect. So I don't feel like we should be above changing things in the U.S. to be better, basically. I'm not like an elitist. I don't think the U.S. has the perfect system. I think it's absurd to claim that it does. But it's a good system, generally. I think the fact that the system that the U.S. has right now, like the legal system and everything that the U.S. has, the fact that it's lasted as long as it has is a testament to just how intelligent those guys were when they set it up. Like, I could not have set it up. Like, I could not have set up a government as well as they did for the U.S. Like, that is so seriously impressive. Anyway, let's take another look at the article here. North Korea is home to more than 25 million people who live under a form of communist rule which strictly controls all areas of daily life. People have to ask permission to travel around, and it's difficult for visitors to enter the country. All TVs and radios are tuned to state channels, and people caught listening to foreign broadcasts face harsh punishments. It's not just that TVs and radios are tuned to state channels. It's that there is a state-run media organization that basically talks about the leader 24/7 in a very Kafka-esque brainwashy type of style. And you can't change it. Like, that's it. That's what you're watching. Every bit of news you get comes from Kim Jong-un. That's pretty much all you have. Like, that's all you can consume is that. It's really, really Orwellian. Like, it is the definition of Orwellian, seriously. It's scary. These controls mean that most North Koreans may have little or no idea of world events or how their country is thought of by the outside world. The U.S. has, in the past, sent aid, like food rations, to North Korea because North Koreans are, like, starving to death. There's just no food there. And they're, like, I forget, maybe 5 inches shorter than their South Korean brethren because of malnutrition. So the U.S. has sent food aid to North Korea before, but on the packages that they sent were stamped a gift from the United States of America or something like that. right? Because they wanted the people to know who was giving them this food. Try to get some kind of a message from the outside in. So naturally, you'd think to yourself, well, North Korea is just not going to give the food to them, to the people, right? Or something. Or they're going to scratch it out or repackage it or something. No. First of all, almost all of the food went to the military. So they got first crack at the food. Then it got passed down to the people. And then it hit black markets because it's not a capitalist country. It's I think it's actually a socialist country. I don't think it's fully communist. I'm not really sure. Anyway, so it hit black markets. And interestingly enough, the leadership, like Kim Jong-un, he didn't want people to remove a gift from the U.S. from the packaging. He wanted it to stay there. And on all of the state media channels, like through the TV and the radio, he was announcing, look at what the U.S. is doing because they're so afraid of us. They're so afraid of how powerful we are. They're giving tribute. They're giving gifts so that we won't attack them, so that we won't hurt them. All this other stuff. It's all part of the propaganda. They feed this information to these people, and there's no counter narrative at all. It is only what the state has to tell you, and that's it. It's extremely heartbreaking and extremely fascinating at the same time to see how people react to this stuff. They say 2 out of 3 people in North Korea are completely loyal to the government and will rat you out. And there are some real horror stories from North Korea. If you're doing something that the state doesn't approve of or something, and the state finds out that you're doing that, they will you and your entire family and anybody that you know, anybody you're close to, they will all of you. If you are the one to tell on somebody, they'll do the exact same thing. That person and their entire family and everybody that they know, except for you. It's basically a way of preventing anybody from breaking any kind of rules of any sort. And the moment that you find out somebody is breaking a rule, it's incentive for you to tell on them so that you don't die for knowing it or for knowing them. It's an extremely oppressive situation. Let's continue on with the article. Most North Koreans are extremely poor with things like fridges, washing machines, and even bicycles hard to come by. Many people rely on aid agencies such as the United Nations to provide food because there's not enough to eat in the country. However, North Koreans who demand more from their government, demand a change in leadership, or those that just try to escape are brutally punished and sometimes killed. An Amnesty International report estimated that hundreds of thousands of people have been put in prison and labor camps because they've disagreed with the government. Crazy, man. It's just a completely different world, and it's so insulated from everything else. It's scary. North Koreans seem to cheer and praise their leader at big public events, but it's difficult to know the reasons for this because it's not possible to speak freely to people living there. The North Korean government says it's because Kim Jong-un is very popular with his people. From an early age, North Koreans are taught that their leaders are like all-powerful gods. But others argue that people could be cheering Kim because they're worried that they would get in serious trouble if they didn't. There are a lot of concerns when it comes to North Korea. There's a lot of scary stuff related to North Korea. Like, they're basically building up this army, building up their nuclear capabilities to scary degrees and insulating themselves more and more from the world. I actually followed North Korea really, really closely a few years ago and everything that was going on with it. And I remember they actually, at one point, they captured a film director and forced him to make movies for the leader. I don't remember if it was Kim Jong-il or Kim Jong-un. Anyways, they forced him to make movies for them until he finally escaped. Usually the route that they have to take, the South Korean border is just way too guarded. Just way too guarded. You have absolutely zero hope of getting out of there. Actually, I may include clips at the end of this of people trying to escape North Korea. It's really, really fascinating. Like, they're chased down by guards and stuff, and some of them just squeak by just barely, get through the fence and take off. But their only route out of North Korea, pretty much, is through China, because the Chinese border is a lot less heavily guarded than the South Korean border, basically. Although it is still heavily guarded, the Chinese one is. It's absolutely fascinating. So you guys should definitely read more about this, because it's really scary stuff, and it's really disheartening. But I feel like I have a moral duty to know what's going on with these people. So anyway, as promised, here's a clip of somebody escaping from North Korea. This does not happen very often, almost never. But in this one case, it was a North Korean soldier trying to cross the North Korea-South Korea border. Like I said before, this is the most dangerous route to take, because the border between China and North Korea is a lot more relaxed, though it is still guarded. But they do import stuff from China sometimes, so your best bet is to go through China. Only problem is, if China catches you, they'll send you back and it's lights out. South Korea won't send you back. They support defectors as much as they can, so if you successfully make it over the South Korean border, then you're home free. So here you can see the soldier driving up to the guard gate and blowing right through it. Then he runs into a roadblock, gets out, and books it for the DMZ. Technically, it's against UN regulations for anybody to fire into the demilitarized zone, but as you can see, they did anyways. This guy did make it to the other side. There was a South Korean liberation group waiting for him. You can find this video on YouTube, and I think he eventually went on to tell his story to the news and everything, so give that a watch. It's extremely fascinating to get an insider's glimpse into the situation there. If you like what I do and you want to make sure I can continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, you can support me on Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. I'm trying to make a shirt design for every cult I've covered. I haven't gotten every one, but I'm working on it. So check it out and see if your cult is up there. Second, you can support me by checking out my game shop. I sell controller, cartridge, and game box stands for every system from the original Nintendo and Sega Game Gear to the Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. So give that a look too. And finally, if you want to support me in some way other than monetarily, you can check out my other YouTube channels. I have a retro game channel where I answer questions like, why does Shy Guy have a mask? And why are CRT TVs the best way to play retro games? I also have the podcast where I talk about stuff I don't feel I can say on a monetized channel. And finally, I have my main channel where I talk about cults. I wish I didn't have to worry about dancing around subjects carefully in the first place, but I chose to do this as a full-time job, so unfortunately, I rely on YouTube's AdSense and on the support of patrons to continue doing the work I do. Anyways, check me out in all those places if you haven't already. Thanks for listening, guys.